All right, it's a pleasure to have us again today. We are highly welcome to today's Safeoclock Health and Safety Interactive Workshop. My name is Johnson Wala, and I will be leading the presentation for today. After that, I know Mr. Stephen has some input to make. Then we'll open the floor as usual to share our knowledge, discuss, ask questions. The ones we cannot answer, we refer them or we go back and research on them and talk about them later. So that is how we go about it here. Today's topic, we are talking about management of workplace biological hazards. So that is what we are discussing today. So in a layman's term, what is biological hazard? And they are always called biohazards. So biohazards are majorly those substances that threatens the living organisms, now especially human beings. So they come in form of either bacteria or virus, fungi, parasites, or biological toxins. So they cause infections, they cause diseases, they cause allergies, reactions, and other health problems in the workplace. So that is what we are going to be discussing today. So we are going to be looking at the forms of the biohazards, the type of where they can be found, the causes, the areas where they breed. Then we can be looking at some of the health effects that these biohazards causes. And we'll also be talking about the preventions and how to work around them. Okay, so let's look at some of the biohazards. The first one we'll be looking at is sharp waste. Now, this is a major, especially in health sector. This is one of the major hazards that biohazards can originate from, or some of the sources of biohazards in medical settings. When skins appear using sharp objects that are contaminated or that has been infected by any of these organisms, either bacteria or viruses, then getting in contact with the body fluids or blood, then the humans can easily contact that disease, thereby so that is one of them. Some of the diseases or some of the infections that can be transmitted in this form could be HIV, could be hepatitis B, it could be a whole lot of blood or fluid transmitted infections. Another form of biohazard in the workplace are gotten from the mud and mist. These are two common types of fungi. These are one of the examples of fungi that pose various health risks to individuals. They can be inhaled, and they are usually found in wet areas. That is the locations where they are very cold. Due to cold, that place becomes very wet. So the fungi can grow in those locations. And getting into the human body, it can go through inhalation or contact with the skin, or it can also be involuntary ingestion as well. It can lead to sneezing, coughing, itching eyes, or rashes on the skin. So these fungi, they grow more or highly in moist areas and areas that has poor ventilation for example, in the basement, in your work locations where there is poor ventilation and that place becomes wet. So the fungi grow in those locations. And getting in contact with the skin can cause skin reactions, skin infections. When it gets to the eyes, can cause eye itching, can cause some even eye damage as well. So this is moths and yeast. So the other form of biological hazards are organic or other contributing factors or other areas where biological hazards are found are organic materials, including waste, the food waste generated in the workplace, the organic materials, garbages, even sewage or plant materials. So those type of waste that we generate in the workplace. So this type of waste are inevitable. The workers, they eat in the mess hall. There are locations where sewages are kept or sewages are removed. So it's inevitable in our workplace. And if not properly managed, it can indirectly or indirectly get in contact with the humans or workers in the workplace, thereby leading to different forms of infections in the human. So it can get in contact through, people can contact it through inhalation also, or through ingestion. It can go inside people's food and they'll eat it, involuntary ingestion. So these bacteria, when they get into the body, they can cause different kinds of diseases, vomiting, nausea, respiratory infections. So this is organic materials, and they are a typical example of biohazards in the workplace. Another biohazards that are typically example in the workplace are stinging insects. So these insects like bees, hops, hornets, spiders, so they can transmit some infections, maybe through fungi or viruses into the human body, thereby contaminating the human blood, and different forms of illness or different forms of sickness can originate from that single bite or sting. So what do we do? The symptoms could be swelling, it could involve breathing difficulties, there could be dizziness, loss of consciousness, depending on the insect that stings the person. So there are different illness, different infections that could be generated through this contact with these stinging insects. So the controls, how is this control, or how can we control these hazards and the risk associated with them? The COSH regulation has specific instructions on how we can manage hazardous exposure to hazardous substances in the workplace. And biological hazard is also mentioned, not just chemical hazards that are mentioned in COSH. Biological hazards are also identified, and we are supposed to take proper actions. The employers are mandated to take actions to ensure that they protect the workers against biological hazards in the workplace. So we should also conduct risk assessment. Depending on the location of the site, our risk assessment should not just focus only on physical hazards or chemical hazards. We should extend our risk assessment to biological hazards, try to identify some of the biological hazards that are associated or that will be present in the workplace, then ensure that we have adequate control measures, or we recommend adequate control measures to mitigate the risk. Another control which we have in place is monitoring and health surveillance, especially for people going on offshores, people working in remote areas. So there should be a regular health monitoring and health surveillance to ensure that the workers are safe and they are healthy. So we should also have emergency preparedness or emergency action plans in place in case something like this happens, in case the illness becomes uncontrollable in the workplace, so that actions could be taken and they could be taken to hospitals for immediate medical intervention. So the other controls that we should have in place are PPE, use of PPE, ensuring that adequate PPEs are provided for the workers based on the risk identified in that workplace. Respiratory protection equipment should be provided if the risk of inhalation is present. Biological waste should be adequately or properly managed by competent contractors. All the waste containers should be adequately labeled and secured. So contaminated containment measures can be put in place, ensuring that biological hazards are not spread around the site, that they are properly contained. Then ventilation, ensure that there's adequate ventilation in the workplace. Cleaning and decontamination should be done regularly to ensure that all contaminated areas are adequately cleaned with antiseptics, ensuring that there is no risk of getting infected through contact with those surfaces. Training and education should not be overemphasized. We should train the workers on those risks or the hazards identified in the workplace and the control measures in place, so that they will be aware of those hazards and take adequate actions to protect themselves. Emergency response plan should be available, and contact details of nearby hospitals or emergency response team should be available all around the workplace. Then, as health and safety professionals, we should ensure that we're in compliance with all local regulations as regards to managing biological hazards, and we'll keep adequate record of all incidents involving biological hazards in the workplace. So this is a summary of what I have to share, and I will open the room for others to share their slides as well.
Close the door, close the door. Okay. Yes, let me add one or two comments. You really point out basically what we need to know when it comes to management of workplace biological hazard. And as we all know, we have different industries that are more prone, when it comes to biological hazard. Okay, so like you have rightly said, part of it is the like the healthcare sector. Just a minute, please. So I'm sorry about that, please. So basically, what I'm trying to say is that a lot of industry that are high risk, especially healthcare, maybe in the agricultural setting, there's a lot of predisposing factor, because I know for those of us who work in the construction, we might not basically be much familiar with the biological hazard, but there's one most important one that hits us globally, because when you talk about the last pandemic, these are part of biological hazard, because both viruses, bacteria, fungal infection, all of them, they fell into this category of biological hazard. But I know if you want to really discuss more of the topic, you might be focusing on probably the healthcare, the chemical industries, I think the healthcare industry more, especially because they on a daily basis, they are exposed to a lot of, that is what they're exposed to, so the chances or the risk factor is very high. So basically, just like I'm making reference to the COVID-19, I would really want to emphasize on that because this is where I'll be drawing out the line so that it will cut across all industry because we could see how it affected everybody, irrespective of your industry. Even it affected the home, individual home, public places that are not even workplaces. So for me, I believe it's very important that as an health and safety practitioner, we should be updated. We should be conscious about biological hazard. We should not be carried away by the fact that, yes, okay, maybe it's peculiar to a certain industry. And as we all know, just as Mr. Johnson has highlighted, there are different way we get this thing in contact to ourselves as an individual. Like if you look at the last pandemic, it was airborne, it was through inhalation, through contact, you know, whether with sharp objects, it has so many routes, but basically it was just all over the air. People are just inhaling it, people are just contacting it and stuff like that. So we could know how much damage it caused, in as much as there are a lot of myth behind the whole involvement and later disappearance. But then I could believe that we all had an experience, directly or indirectly. So, because me, I'm also a witness of one or two experiences during that period. So I know what many of us passed through. Even if we don't have a direct contact, we knew, like those of us who are in Doha here, we knew how the restriction was. I know how you'll be restricted. You cannot go to places, the parks, everywhere was shut down. Maybe sometimes they ask you to quarantine yourself at home. You have to stay for 1 or 2 weeks. Because I can remember my second son my wife gave birth to him during that period. So I could remember then they told me as the husband, you need to be at home for 2 weeks, so you have to be with them. You don't go out, you don't come in, things like that. So I understood the psychological, trauma it gave me because I was just like, I cannot even go to the mall. So I was just making my orders through online and all that. So sometimes those things are crazy. So which I believe it is important we look at that as a professional and to be specific to our workplace. Now, and with focus to construction and other industry where people uses some kind of public utilities or facility rather. I will give you an instance, apart from the COVID, part of the biological hazard we see in the workplace, there's one common one also they call hepatitis. Okay. Hepatitis is another virus that is really, 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 really dangerous. That is even the chances of you contacting it is even more than even the HIV we used to know about. Because when you look at hepatitis, the virus can, in fact, somebody infection and the blade, you leave the blade outside for a very long time, for days, for months, that blade, the virus will still be surviving, on that blade as compared to HIV that they said it cannot live outside the living cells. Hepatitis B virus can survive outside living cells. So which means even with sharp objects, even if it's splashed on the surface of anything, you can have a contact with it and you become infected. And once that affects any individual, the direct organ or target organ is the liver. Okay, and because it causes hepatitis of the liver, and which looks somehow close related to like a cancer, So and we know the importance of liver, the function it does. Because I even lost a friend here in Doha during the time of COVID. Although it wasn't the COVID that affected him, but at the end of the day, when he didn't tell anybody, it was after the death and all that that we all found out that he was battling with hepatitis. Where did he get it from? How did he get it? Nobody knows. But what I'm trying to say that this we can easily get it in a public place like a toilet. You know, if the place is not well sanitized or taken care of. So, which means possibly even in our workplace in the construction sector, if somebody come and deposit hepatitis B virus there, we are likely to get it. So that is why it is very important that we look at the hygiene, the hygiene aspect, the sanitary stuff within our respective industry. And, as an health and safety practitioner, we must try to understand that in identifying this hazard and assessing the risks of biological hazard, we must try to ensure that we conduct a site assessment before we begin any work, any project, or even if you join the project at a point in time. And we should also determine the tasks, and the workers at risk as well. We should also try to evaluate and assess the potential severity or likelihood of exposure of workers to all or any form of biological hazard we are going to encounter in our workplace, and also try to look at how we can record all the findings, all incidents, related to biological hazard in order for us to be compliant with the requirement and all that. So another aspect is that, as we all know, as a professional, we should deploy the means of how we control them. How we can eliminate, substitute, biological safety, isolation room, and stuff like that. So I wouldn't want to go deep into all these things because they might probably take our time. And most importantly, which I believe is that training is very important, because through training, people get information. What we are doing today, whether we call it training or we call it professional discussion or we call it webinar, see, all we are giving out communication. We are having a kind of open communication. So in this kind of process, we learn. Do you understand? We learn and we understand. So training is also a form of communicating a certain health and safety information to the workers. And that is why they said a proper training should be a two-way thing. At the end of the day, you need to have a feedback. So when you have a feedback from the employees or the workers, then we have achieved what we call open communication, and which is very effective. So for me, the training, giving this information, they are very, very vital, important. And also we should look at how we can ensure mandatory use of personal protective equipment, in as much as it remains the last, what do they call it, control measure. I also respect the use of PPE, because when it comes to biological hazard, the truth is that when you look at the risk involved in the health care sector, maybe I want to place PPE as number one, though as time to be challenged. But the truth is that you could remember the time of COVID. The first thing you see people, they cover everywhere. It's all about PPE. Do you understand? It's all about PPE. Because if there are some situations that you cannot restrict yourself, there are frontline workers. Okay, what about the frontline workers that were going there to save people? Their first line of defense is people, was PPE, which they did. So for me, in as much as it remains the list of hierarchy of control, I still respect and believe much in PPE. So it's very, very important. And also, we should also prepare for response, because I know after the COVID, people begin to have contingency plan for disease outbreak and things like that. A lot of companies were vulnerable. Even the most big company will feel, oh, we are safety compliant. Even the health and safety profession at large, they learned a lot. There was a lesson learned for this outbreak of COVID. We all learned a lot. So, and a lot of companies, they decide to devise a kind of action plan in case of any pandemic, any outbreak like that. So, like I said, it's very important that we apply the same mechanism we use in doing whatever we do in order to manage our site safely. And the best practice that we can bring in for continuous improvement is that we should ensure that we have a regular policy review or development, okay? And we have some kind of preventive programs among our sites, and also try to add it into our safety culture within our organization, you understand? So if we decide to bring all these things together, I believe we're going to have a better and safer place of work for all. Thank you very much. I would just like to give the platform to others to say one or two things based on their experience and knowledge. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Stephen. Thank you
Welcome.
for sharing your knowledge. The floor is open. Let's hear from others.
All right. Good evening, everyone.
Good evening, sir.
As always, it's my pleasure being in your midst. I've learned too much based on the first slide that was shared, and also from the information that Mr. Francis has shared also. So with regards to biological hazards, one thing I want to comment also from what Mr. Francis has already said is you realize that in today work environment, we don't really place emphasis on the health side of health and safety. For example, you hardly see in the construction sector company carrying out health risk assessment, which is very, very important. Most of the time, they will just have a risk assessment that talks about safety, and sometimes they might include some health aspect of the risk assessment, but comprehensively, they don't have a separate health risk assessment which is carried out. For example, companies, especially in Qatar, they have most of these tea boys that serve food for the workers, serve coffee, serve drinks. And these tea boys also usually use the restroom. So from my experience, these people, they are the primary people if there is any reason that biological health hazard or viruses want to spread in an environment such as an office setting. These people are the primary people who can do that. That is why in Qatar, it's required that those people handling food has to go and has to have mandatory, I think every 3 months or 6 months, they have to go for fit to work to make sure that they don't have any communicable disease that they can spread to the workforce. Yeah. So health risk assessment is something that we want to look into. It's very, very important because in offices, you can also contact these diseases, like Mr. Francis said, especially if your office is not well, your office setting is not well maintained, and there are rats all over. There is a risk that you can be in contact with leptospira virus. Is it virus or disease, or I don't know, but leptospirosis is also a very, very important thing that you can get from a rat disease. So it's very important that in our office setting, we carry out, or in our organization, not even only in the office setting, we carry out health risk assessment to make sure that all these things are taken into consideration, because we can also be affected by these biological hazards. So that's what I just want to add from my side. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Manuel. Thank you for always sharing your experience with us. All right, the floor is open. Let's hear from others. And I'm glad that we are keeping it short so that others will have will have time to share their knowledge as well.
Okay. Okay. Good evening, everyone.
Good evening, sir.
Thank you again. Wonderful presentation. As always, we learn a lot from your presentation. Once again, thank you. I just want to add two things. The first thing I want to talk about are the factors that can increase biological hazard. In our group chat, I put one photo there. You will see the image of an insect, which I don't know the name in English. This insect here in Guinea is a threat for our construction project. But the presence of this insect depends on the environment. Like from site in Guinea, the insects are very many. From November, December, January, where the climate is cold. The insect has acid inside. As you can see on the image, when you kill the insect come in contact with your skin, you kill it, then it will cause a skin burn. So this is an example of biological hazard, which is a threat for construction projects around Guinea here. The presence of this insect and insect like mosquito, we talk about mosquito has impact on many projects. How? If on our project here we realize that during our induction period, people that are not from Guinea, the expert like Europeans or people from the place where there is no mosquito and this type of insect, during the induction, when you explain to them that we have this type of insect here, you have to be very, very careful. They start being scared, you know? And as malaria is known as very dangerous illness, some will come. By the time you are enjoying their experience, you are working together, when they are victim of malaria once, they will run away. They will go and not coming back again because they are scared. They will say, I come to work, I don't come here to die. So biological hazard has impact economically on organization or on a project. It is a real threat. As Mr. Emmanuel was saying, we feel sometimes organizations don't really put effort on controlling biological hazard, but it is the hazard that is present at all stages of the project, because when you already gather living bodies, you know, you're supposed to know that you are dealing with biological hazard. A second thing that I wanted to talk about is some things we are doing on our project site, but people don't consider it as a very dangerous attitude, but it is dangerous. Most of the office, you will see that many people are using one desk. Like HSC department, they have only 5 desks, and the people in that department is more than 5 people. People working day shift, they will come use the desks when they leave. People coming night shift, they will use the same desks without cleaning. This is very dangerous. Mr. Emmanuel also talked about the presence of T-boy. I wanted to say, because I have been victim of that. During the COVID period, on one of our projects, we were there doing our best to avoid getting this COVID until the T-boy get the COVID. When T-boy get the COVID, the story, the end of the story was very bad, because like more than 60% of staff got COVID. And it was very scary that day in office when we realized that early in the morning, we didn't see our T-boy. We start asking what happened. Then he called, he said he has been tested positive. Then everybody was scared, and we were right to be scared. Most of us go, we got it, even me here. So those are the things that we need to. For today, some companies don't use T-Boy anymore. They have cafeteria where everybody needs to go and serve themselves. This is very important because T-Boy, they will be the reason to spray biological hazard. If they get any infection, that means everybody that getting tea for them, they will be exposed. So this is the two things I wanted to add for today. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for your wonderful contribution as always.
Hello?
Yes.
Mr. Abubakar want to say something?
Yeah, go ahead. Go ahead, sir.
Okay, thank you for having me again. This is my first time to participate in your webinar section. And the topic we are talking about today is very important because I'm working for one company, one contractor in charge of waste management. And you know, most of the time, like Mr. Francis said, that we are dealing with waste on site. And I'm just want to focus to maybe 2 or 3 points. The first one is about organic materials, like food waste. And you know, we have one contractor in charge of canteen, is Willie Sayes, and that's contractor in charge for foods for all the projects. And our previous meeting with the contractor, I said that we need to make one team and to go to meet other contractor to explain them about waste management. Because we have just observed that some of them, once they will come to the canteen, they will help themselves with foods. They don't check about the quantity they will eat, and most of the time they throw a lot of foods, and that is have really the impact, economical impact, financial, everything. And our guys, most of the time, like for all canteen in CGD, we just brought some waste bin for them. And there in the project, we have 5 types of bins. We have a yellow one for food waste, for organic waste. We have blue one for all recyclable waste, like glass, like aluminum can, tin, and we have also gray bin for like paper, plastic, water bottle, everything. And we have 2 additional waste bin. One is red, and that red one is for clinic because we have a big clinic in the site, and inside that bins we just make lock of it and we put on it and we give the key to the clinic the guys. And I mean the doctor, nurse, first aid, every all to them. So only those people need to control medical waste. So once we keep that waste bin near the clinic and we have everything, all waste from the clinic, they will just come and drop inside the plug. Once the bin is full, they'll just call us, we'll come and we'll remove from there. I sent some photos inside the group. We can see we have one machine, we call that a turbo burner. That turbo burner will help us to eliminate completely medical waste because we don't have need to risk to put that in the process because there is no final issue, only elimination we need. Once we collect it, we need to burn it completely like a 700 degree. And we have also big incinerator for those kind of waste. And also you see green bins, that is for like contaminate absorbents from mechanical workshop, all this waste. Also, we just need to eliminate all this waste. And we have some waste like used oil from a maintenance shop. And there we have one plant for only use oil. So we just make to make like a fuel, petrol, and some kind of we give also to the local women to make a soap with it, and we are following all this process because that is our our contract, our scope. And also I want to add something. I have found 2 or 3 things for all contractor. The first one, I make a meeting with all contractors in the Simando mining projects. I meet them all, health and safety officers. I decide to raise up awareness with all contractors because in that project, Rio, they're just giving to all contractors the capacity to deal with the waste. And we are here to monitor all this waste that are production from there. So we push them to make segregation. We are pushing them to collect it. We are pushing them to send the waste from their own place to our final landfill where we are treating all the waste. And the third point was about controlling biological hazard, like medical health surveillance. You know, in our projects with my contractor, we have different team, and for this team, I just decided with administration that every 6 months, Mr. Emmanuel was saying the same almost. He said, for every 6 months, we are sending people for some kind of medical checking point because what we are doing is very dangerous things. It is medical, about medical, and I mean, we have like 2 times per year, 1 year to send people quarterly and annually. So from like January to July, we have that treatment. We have that time to send all people to medical checkup. And the end of every year, we'll send again all people for medical checkup because we think that what we are doing, we are exposing ourselves. We know we are follow all all things we have said about the control, biological control, but we need to be sure that because human being can be every time, like we are exposing the waste, we can be all the time with disease, with sickness. We don't know that to help each other, we need to check every time about our employees' health and safety. And I want to also add something about the canteen. When I came the first time, I said that because Mr. Francis was talking about animals, insects, and everything. And I also observed that if you place like waste bin close to the canteen, it is very easy for a rat, insects, and all these things, snake even, to come close because the snake, I can tell you, we are dealing with a snake every day. Every day. So that means with the emergency response team, they are help us every time because it's prohibited in a region to kill snake. Even a snake you don't kill. If you find the snake, you need to call them. They will come and catch it and send it out away from you. So that means in relation to my organization, we are dealing every day with waste management, and we have many plans to check to maintain our all the workplace safe, housekeeping daily going on. We are checking quarterly and annually our team medical, and we are follow other contractors to do same the client or written to their requesting to do. That will help all people to be safe from disease and what everything. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Bakar. Your experience is quite enormous in this field. We are talking about biological hazards based on a few experience, but for you already depth into it. You are battling with biological hazards every day. So
yes,
the Lord is your strength.
Please give Omojade, his hand is off for almost 30 minutes now.
Please go ahead.
So that he doesn't have a musculoskeletal
so that
injury.
his hand will not get
Yes. Yeah. Good evening, everybody. Yeah.
Good evening, sir.
Actually, I work in the catering industry. So, and we cater for flights for airlines, multinational airlines. So we don't joke with biohazards at all. Now, in working in these places, they are laid out programs we use in working. We have an HACCP, we have CCP programs, we have PROP, we have what do you call it now? We have a CCP. So you see, it's not when we're discussing about biological hazard. It's not as we see in a construction company, because I have actually worked in construction before, but I found out that when you come to these industries, it is more critical. You know, germs, they are everywhere, even in our body. Being has germs, normal microflora. They prevention our food. Food intoxication is real. Food infiltrating into factory. The first thing you do, like your hairnets, you must use your nose mask, and you don't go without wearing a top coat, a white coat into the production areas. The reason why we're doing this is we don't want our food to get infected, and in our CCPs, CCPs means critical control points. These are points in which we monitor for biological uh, hazards, and there's a certain extent to which a biological hazard should be in a food before you want to or to classify it as a hazardous food. You see, so even we have OPROP when our vendors are coming in. First and foremost, they ought to be at the receiving area, and they have to produce produce to us. They're really shooting their food from the right sources, because quality control assurance is ensured in these places. You see, and apart from that, we don't allow wood, anything that will cause or any breeding of insects into production areas. It's not allowed. Then after preparing the meals, control point, temperature danger zone, that's that temperature range, uh, biological hazards or biological agents are meant to thrive. So we don't allow food to get to a certain temperature where biological hazard will be allowed to thrive. So we have blast killing units in our hot kitchen where we as simple as more of a they're more of a physical work. But when you come to the catering industry and hospitality industry, you find out that it is more than you think. And also, we have a program in place. Every two weeks, there's what we call a fumigation exercise that has been done. And the vendor that does this fumigation ought to produce a document to really show that you see he did this fumigation well and everything was in check. Then we have uh, the different monitors in the premises to monitor for insects and rats. All these are things that are easily environment. So what we do here, we make sure that food is not open to the room temperature, but it's not open to the temperature, the danger zone. Apart from that too, we also have a food handler test that's been conducted for all personnel, and that's been done every year twice. We do it twice every year. So it's a critical thing. Catering industry is it's not just what we think it is. It's more serious than that. I was talking about immunocompromise. You have certain people that have certain state that if you give them some their immune system, they're going to flights. Our clients who you deal with, they are flight don't want a situation in which they are hazards. So using hand nets, using all those things, we don't joke with it at all. The hazard analysis and critical control points is a program we don't play with. It's something that will make sure it's effective. Everything needed for food to come out safe for their customers is put in place. Where I'm almost staying here, there's a loader, high loader that carries our food to the flights. And in loading these high loaders, what we do, there are certain temperatures that this food is being kept, and we don't allow food to stay so long in this equipment. Immediately the food is being loaded into the equipment, it is sent to the flight. And if we found out that a flight is going to delay, and we have already the client has already told that we should load, we start coming, what happens? And the client tells us that they no longer need the food. What would we discard? Can you imagine food that is worth millions of naira? They discard them. So foodborne illness, food infection, food intoxication is real. It's not the way we see it in construction industry. In catering industries, we don't play with it at all. So those are the little things I've got to say. Thank you very much for this topic, sir.
Thank you very much, Majide. I was keen to I was paying attention to the details you were saying, even though the network was frustrating, but I know you are an expert in that field. So we appreciate your contribution. Thank you very much for your time. Mr. Eddie, your hand is up. Go ahead.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Thank you so much, Mr. Johnson, for what you are doing. Sharing your wealth of knowledge with us is really appreciated. And all the teams that will put up this every week. Thank you, guys. So I want to dwell more on COVID-19 emergency preparedness and response. Before now, nobody actually thought of taking biological hazards as a very big and serious thing until COVID-19 came. And the whole world just knew that there was nothing on our emergency preparedness or response. Nobody had anything on that plan, nothing that had to do to address those issues, which meant after that time, people started working from their home, social distancing and all that. So that brings to fore that this biological hazard was really underrated, was not really identified before COVID. So organization we must also ensure that in our emergency preparedness and response plans, or anything you call it in your organization, biological hazard must be included in terms of the emergency response, what to do at any point in time. Because we are just hearing that, okay, there's something else that will come up maybe this year, next year, nobody really knows, So those things we must also take into cognizance anytime we are doing our emergency preparedness. Now, the other question is, how do we test those emergency plans preparedness? How do we test them? Just like you do your drills and all that. Is there a possible way of testing them? Do you have your isolation center in case, or is it something that, okay, after COVID, we now use that place as maybe security post, office, or restroom and all that? If it comes up now, how do you respond to it immediately? Not just allowing the same issue that happened the other time to also happen again. So in our emergency preparedness or emergency action plan, depending on recovery contingency plan, we must take biological hazard seriously by making sure that, okay, in your risk assessment, is actually you identify the risk that has to do with it. What do you put in place, the control measures, and your response time? People must be trained, apart from doing your health surveillance and all that, training people that will respond to it immediately. It was at that time we started doing that out like our organization. Oh, people need to be trained on how to respond to this kind of COVID-19 biological hazard. People had to be trained at a short notice. So at the beginning of the year, as part of our emergency preparedness testing, then we should also put biological hazard as part of the things we need to test during the year. So that's just my little contributions and addition. Thank you so much, Mr. Johnson.
Thank you very much, Mr. Eddie. I know the time is not convenient for you, but you have to join us. So thank you very much for your time and for your contribution. Biological hazard. I hope we are going to improve our management of biological hazards at workplace, because people don't really take this serious. We go home and we get sick without knowing that is what we got from work. The contaminations and the common areas that we are contaminated, we took it home, and no proper hand washing culture. Some go to toilet, after that they move straight to the office, they touch the mouse, the next shift comes, use the same mouse, and they start eating snacks without washing hands, transferring germs and bacteria from here and there. So we should improve our communication on these angles, improve these topics in two bus talks. Not every time we are talking about work at height. Those things are very important. Physical hazards are important, but we should improve and give more slots to discussion of biological hazards in our toolbox talks, briefings, internal meetings. So this will help to improve the awareness, of biological hazards existing in our workplace, so that it will become safer for everyone. So I appreciate everyone who has contributed. Stephen, your hand is up. Go ahead.
Sorry, I missed out one or two things, probably because of, when the head is full of a lot. And so, but with the little contribution from Omojide and Mr. Eddie, I was able to get some stuff back. Basically for the risks involved in the catering industry, which Mr. Omojide has said a lot based on his expertise. I would have said one or two things before, which I forgot, but he has already said a lot about it, which is very, very important. Then for Mr. Eddie, when it comes to the preparedness, when it comes to this biological hazard, I know most times we as a professional, we don't have issues because we can always talk, we can always speak to our management. But another thing is how committed this management is another thing. But I believe it is a very big and robust organization. They will not take it any lightly. In as much as we've experienced the COVID, I still know some organization, if you are bringing such an ideas and all that, they will still want to frown at it. But on the other side of it, to complement, maybe there's a plan in place, like, on the normal emergency for fire and all that, we do drills. But on the other side, for the biological hazard, even if we don't have those physical resources and stuff like that, we can just have a kind of a mindset drill, which we have a knowledge of. Like there's this kind of simulation. There's a kind of, it just comes like a video, like a video to show you how, when it happens, what can be done and all that. So at least to an extent, for those organizations that might not be able to get those things physically in place, because most times some preparedness might be quite difficult. I'm not making an excuse for organization, but for organization who really does not really care much, from our side, we know as an health and safety practitioner, we've been in so many organizations. For some of us, that you go to some organization that don't have a system, but what can you do as a practitioner? Because we find ourselves in a situation whereby we try to create a way when it seems there's no way, just to make sure that people, the workers, are safe. Do you understand? So if we are in such kind of situation, we need to introduce a kind of simulation, a video that will just show that, okay, when it happens, this is what we can do, things like that, to just get these people mind prepared in case of such situation. And most importantly, again, one thing I skip is that the biological hazard, we should not just limit it to the workplace alone, because even in our accommodation where the workers are staying, okay, because here in Qatar, I know part of the requirements here, some organizations, you go to inspect workers' accommodation. You see, it is very important, even in their facilities, like when you inspect their accommodation, you inspect their kitchen, inspect a lot of things, which for me, I believe those areas are also very important, Because if you try to make the workplace safe from biological hazard, and there's no focus on the welfare in their accommodation, you create a very big and wide gap, because when they go to the accommodation, they bring it in back to the workplace, it will create a lot of chaos. So I think we should also begin to re-emphasize on that area of accommodation inspection to make sure that everything is on the proper hygienic terms. Thank you very much. That's just what I want to point more light on.
So, Stephen, sorry,
Yes,
Johnson, I'm not taking over from you. So, it's a good point. That drill you for biological hazard, you can do simulation just like you say, or tabletop. So that tabletop is like simulation. People will gather, they sit down in a room, they watch a video, then you just demonstrate what could be done, and in case of emergency biological hazard, what needs to be done and all that. And at the end of the day, people can sign up. It's a good input. Thank you so much.
you're welcome, sir.
Sorry, let me come in there. I have another doubt. So what can we say are the practical arrangement for this biological hazard or biological emergency? For example, if people consume food in a setting where workers are provided with food and they consume food and they suffer from food poisoning, how can we as organization make provision for that? For example, is it that we make provision for maybe extra toilets that they can go and relieve themselves in case of running stomach? How do we make, because once I think Mr. Anidu brought this about a biological emergency, it ring my mind on one conversation I was having also. How do we make practical arrangement for biological emergency? Is it that we call the primary health providers to let them know that, okay, you can come in and take our workers? Is it that we have extra toilets? So what are the practical means we can use to
well, let me come in. Yeah, let me come in now. I think it depends on the, will I say, jurisdiction, in the sense that depending on the country, depending on what is in place. Like, for example, now let me use Qatar as a reference point. Okay, yeah, even if you are making an emergency, that's why sometimes when it comes to health and safety, I believe we should be able to work in a well-structured organization. I believe different departments need to work together to achieve certain things. Because if you are talking about emergency, it's not about safety department. You are talking about the entire organization, right? Because if it happens now, it is not only safety people you are evacuating. You are talking about the entire staff, even the visitors and stuff like that. So basically, what I believe, like the way it works in Qatar now, like especially in the construction industry or some setting, is good that at least some sites they have a site clinic, right? Especially when you get to maybe like 500, you have a doctor. You even have a site nurse. It's a doctor, a site nurse, depending on the population and all that. So I believe if you look at the setting, there's the safety are always working either with the site nurse or the site doctor. There's still this close relationship and all that. So whatever the initiative is from the safety department, there must be a collaboration between either the site nurse or the site doctor. When there's a situation like food poisoning or stuff like that, I think this is beyond what we could handle. This should be transferred to the site nurse or the site doctor who have this expertise to know what to do and what not to do. And we also know that in some jurisdiction, even if accident happen, people carry out first aid. Do you understand? And the kind of first aid you do in some jurisdiction, you don't do it in Qatar. Even as a safety, even if you are trained as a first aider, you cannot administer even paracetamol. You don't have right to do that if you are not a certified nurse. I know some people just do it, but by the law, you are not supposed to do that. Do you understand? So in some area, first aider, they can give some of those over-the-counter prescription and all that. But for here, you can't try it. If people do it, it's against the law. So basically,